Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the Village of Bellows Falls Trustees meeting.
I will move on to approve the minutes of October 17th, 2023.
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made, seconded, that we would approve the meeting minutes of Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
No, also.
Anything? Okay. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Anybody? If not, we will move on to the manager's report.
So just a couple things for the board's information. The Great River Hydro FERC relicensing project, which seems to be never ending. The original filing date for this renewal is May 1st, 2017. The permit or the request was amended on December 7th of 2020. We just got a more recent update from the FERC people saying that there are deficiencies now in another revision that Great River had sent in on June 8th. So they have another 60 days now to cure those deficiencies. The reason I'm giving you all this information is we still have not had an open opportunity to comment as an interested party. So it's incredibly slow to process, but it's still ongoing. As soon as it's available for comment, I'll let the board know, and we can certainly make sure that we get whatever concerns are into the process so that they get addressed as part of this relicensing. So we haven't missed the window. It's just been going incredibly slow through the federal bureaucracy.
So it's been in the works for 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Hard to fathom, right? Leaf collection. So clear plastic bags, we're still picking up leaves. It's supposed to end on the 15th. Typically, we'll extend a day or two when people put stuff out, but certainly if you're going to do it, try to get stuff out. So we won't be collecting much past this week. So for folks that are delaying or move behind on their yard work, now's the time, or you'll have to then either rake them out in the woods or off to the recycling center if you want to get your yard cleaned up for the winter storm season. So, yes.
On that subject, is there a set schedule? I know we go around the town, you see bags here and there, but it used to be a Friday and a Monday.
They haven't really been following it as much.
Just as they have time.
They try to get crews out there at least 3 days during the week to try to pick them up. It's been a little bit late this year. The leaves came down kind of late, so I imagine they might go a few days later just to sort of accommodate that, because some folks are still hanging on. So, but yeah, they don't keep a regular schedule. I also got a lot of guys that are out hunting this time of year.
Right.
So it makes doing anything on a set schedule for right now a little rough. That was it.
Okay. We'll move on to the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda is a presentation, White and Burke for mixed-use development in Bellows Falls.
So I just admitted Joe from White and Burke. Before we start with that, maybe Gary could give a little background as to some of the materials that were in your packet and why we wanted to at least bring you up to date as to where this process stands at the moment. So.
Sure. So we have a lot of opportunities in Bellows Falls, and one of the things that we do is look to other communities in Vermont that have done the same types of things. So, for instance, Bennington area of the downtown that had been post-industrial, empty for a long time. They performed an area-wide plan funded by Brown Forest to get redevelopment going, and that they started that maybe 7 years ago, implemented the first part of the plan last year, over the last 2 years. St. Albans community, a little larger than Rockingham, town of about 7,000. Similar in that they don't have, they don't have a ski resort or some particular thing that makes them successful. Did an area-wide plan. And we have an area-wide plan for the island and under the hill. Includes some development that needs a lot of public investment and that needs in the millions of dollars of private investment. And how do we get that? And so a lot of, all of the communities actually in Vermont that have done TIF districts for that type of thing have used White and Burke. And also just generally identifying the private developers and having a good enough proposal, the right land development agreements to make them work, have used White and Burke. And so we reached out to them regarding a proposal for the first piece of the area-wide plan that's shovel-ready for us, which is a mixed-use development on a town-owned property, in the Bridge Street parking lot is the first piece of that. We spoke with Joe Wyeth of White and Burke, spoke with St. Albans, a community that had done a similar thing with White and Burke, and I think it's really the best way to go to make this work. It's a heavy lift to get private developers investment in the millions of dollars. We haven't done that in a while. So, turn it over to Joe, or if Scott has anything to add there.
No, so I think really this is the beginning. As Gary had said, we've gone through a very extensive area-wide plan review process, and it was a little bit interrupted with COVID, so that took some maneuvering, but we've got at least that portion completed. This is sort of the next step in that evolution, and the goal here is to try to find ways that we can attract some private investment, leverage some of that private investment with some public investment opportunities. I think Joe's going to point out how that has worked in other communities. And then the real goal is long-term, it diversifies our tax base so that we can start to see other opportunities to not always rely on property tax for some of the initiatives that we're trying to undertake here. So I think it's as Gary said, it's not a difficult process as much as you have to be committed to the process, and it does take time and energy, but it has been successful in other communities. They've seen the benefits of this approach, and I think it is something that would also, in the long run, benefit our community as well. So with that as sort of a little background, Joe, do you need to share the screen, or do you just want to present?
No, I don't really have anything to present on the screen. The purpose, I guess, of this meeting is really just to talk about the proposal we submitted and answer any questions that you might have regarding that. But Gary had reached out to us and asked about some of the work that we've done with other communities in helping with public-private partnership projects, going out with a kind of an RFP process to the development community, finding and securing a development partner that works with the municipality then to, create a development project that the town, would really like to see in their downtown. And we've worked on several of those with communities throughout Vermont. Most of them have been in the city of St. Albans over the last 10 years. We've worked on probably 4 or 5 different projects there over the last 10 years. And it's just amazing how that downtown has transformed. But, really it's, you talked about it a little bit already. The, doing development in Vermont is tough. even in Chittenden County, where they can command much higher rents, making the numbers work is very, very, very challenging. Particularly in areas, rural downtowns like Bellows Falls. And so it really does take these public-private partnerships to get something done. Because, just the cost of construction, the cost of doing a project is so high, costs the same to do a project in Bellows Falls as it does in Chittenden County. And, or even in, some of the larger cities in throughout New England. But the rents that they can command, are so much lower. So there's always, and, the value of a project is based on the income, and that's what banks are willing to lend on. So there's always this funding gap between the cost of the project and what they're able to get, from funding from conventional loans. So it's up to these public-private partnerships to work together to just really find ways to either bring down the cost of the project, such as selling a town-owned piece of property for a very nominal price, but also helping find other types of, low-cost funding, whether it be grants or low interest rate loans or things like that, patient capital, whatever we can find to build that capital stack and help that developer just make the numbers work so they can realize a reasonable rate of return and get the project done, because they're not going to do the project if they don't realize a reasonable rate of return. So we've worked on this with several towns. We put together this proposal. The bulk of what we're proposing to do would be managing this RFP process to go out and, solicit, interest from developers, see if we can get somebody interested who's experienced and feels confident that they can work with the town to do something that the town would be proud of. And so I laid out just the various tasks that are involved with that. Also related to that would be assisting the town with some preliminary due diligence work, getting a civil engineer on board to do kind of a high level preliminary assessment of the properties that we're considering. And also preparing some base mapping, because that information is important to both the town and a potential developer. It's important to the town because it just helps you understand, whether there might be some development challenges with the properties we're considering. And also just kind of helps you understand, how big of a building can we really get on this project, on this site, and is that in line with the goals of the town? But then it's also important, this information, for when we go out with an RFP, because the more information we can provide to the development community, the better. That's if we can give them some good information, that'll help them perform their evaluation to see if this is something they want to pursue. So that would be part of our work as well. And finally, we would just be there to work with both the town and the development partner, to help find ways to make this project pencil out and make it work. So we could, assist the tenant with going after alternative funding sources. When issues pop up, which they always do in a development project, we could help find reasonable solutions to those, and make sure that we address those early in the process before they become big problematic issues. And yeah, so that's basically it. Like you said, it can be a long process, and it does take a lot of work and a lot of working together, with the community and the developer.
Joe, could you talk a little bit about, I think the community has had not substantial, but reasonable amounts of below market rate and subsidized housing. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about how do we prepare and how do we make this market rate housing work so that we have some balance in some of our housing offerings. So are there programs that maybe you could just sort of give us some guidelines or some brief information? Because I think the board is certainly more interested. I think the community is more interested in looking at the market rate as opposed to, again, more affordable projects.
Right, right. Um, yeah, I mean, the reason why there's a lot of these affordable housing projects going on around the state is because they have access to the affordable housing tax credits, which, you know, are a huge funding source that help make these types of projects pencil out. But when you're looking at, you know, market rate housing or, you know, or workforce affordable housing, it doesn't qualify as affordable housing or, you know, housing that can use those tax credits, but it's housing that's affordable to your, you know, your workforce, your teachers, your store managers, you know, things like that. You know, again, it's a challenge. The only way you can really make these things work is to find ways to, you know, both reduce the cost of the project, you know, to the developer. So finding ways for maybe, you know, the town to sell the property at a very nominal price. You know, maybe finding ways for the town, if they can find funding to do some of the infrastructure improvements. Again, that's, you know, that's something that the developer won't have to, you know, work into their pro forma or into their project cost, but reducing the cost of the to the developer is key. And then the other part of it too is just helping the developer find, you know, different funding sources that are either, you know, grants, so basically free money, or low interest loan opportunities. And, you know, there aren't a ton of those out there. You know, the state has been putting more money into, you know, there are different terms for, you know, workforce housing, or the missing middle is the term I've been hearing lately. And, you know, those are really more kind of low interest loan type programs. There's, you know, there's a new one out that they decided to funnel. My understanding is they're funneling most of it through VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance Agency. So that's something we would definitely want to explore, just to see, you know, if that could help fill some of these funding gaps. You know, and then there's just other opportunities too. Like if we can find a developer who's able to kind of keep their costs down, you know, they're good at pinching pennies, or if they can find investors that what we call patient capital investors, you know, investors that care about the community, want to see new housing, they want to see their downtown renovated, and so they might be willing to invest in the project, knowing that their return might be lower in the first, you know, 5-10 years of the project. But, you know, it can be done, but again, it just takes a lot of work to find those types of opportunities.
Okay.
So I just want to say that I have heard in the community and from the boards and management about like Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust does a great job with getting nice quality, affordable housing, good management with it, but we haven't been able to do that scale of market rate housing. So one of the reasons we reached out to White and Burke is after a few years of research of how to get those subsidies without the low-income housing tax credits, the tools that are available are really complicated. So one of them is new market tax credits. And you can use those instead of low-income housing tax credits and produce market rate units, but they're really complicated. The professional help is really crucial. We did meet with an attorney with the BFADC board at one point to look at new market tax credits, and that board felt like it was really important to have professionals and find a private developer to be the owner of the new market tax credits. Because the way those tax credits work, after 7 years, the entities that provide the tax credits give them to the project and walk away, and there has to be someone with means and experience to own the project after that. And so White and Burke, the relationships with the private developers, being able to, walk through with the appropriate professionals in place for the new market tax credits. And then the potential for TIF districts and how to provide the public infrastructure without burdening the taxpayers to, like Island Street, for instance, is a hunk of granite. That whole road is going to have to be blasted to get water and sewer in there, and all the bridge work we have to work with the island. So the funding mechanisms are there. They're just really complicated, and every community that's done a TIF district, we talked to over the last few years, and they all worked with White and Burke to make those work. So at any rate, that we feel that it's we have great projects and great potential, but it's really key to have folks that know the private developers, the tools, appropriate development agreements, to really make sure our due diligence is there, and we can use all of these complicated tools that are there. There are some Joe, the missing middle. Their VHFA does have a lot of programs they just came out with that are simpler, but by themselves, like Joe was saying, they don't make it work to pencil out in and of themselves. They're just another piece of it. So.
I've got a question for Joe.
Sure.
Hi, Joe. I've got a question for you related to the structure of the buildings, whether you've worked on any developments where the condominium model has been part of it, either in part or whole. And I'm thinking specifically of the St. Johnsbury Hotel, which I think the retail spaces were condominiums, and then the housing was mixed income. So I'm wondering about, rather than having a new development with all middle income or upper income, I think it seems to avoid having a section of town that doesn't have diversity.
Mhm. Well, most of the projects we have worked on, I believe, have been, all rental, whether it's, apartment units that are being rented out or commercial spaces that are being leased out. We typically will bring a private developer in who ends up owning the property, builds the building, and then, leases the commercial space and rents the apartment. I believe one of the projects that we worked on in St. Albans, I didn't work on it. The president founder of the company, David White, was the lead on that project. That was a recent project that involved redevelopment of probably like half a block right on Main Street in downtown. It included building a new 3-story commercial building, and then a separate market rate housing building. And it was determined, even though it was market rate, it qualified as workforce housing affordable, and they were able to get some money, I think, from the Housing Conservation Board for that. And then there was a third building, which was built by Champlain Housing Trust. So that was one of your traditional affordable housing, projects using tax credits. But I believe that the commercial building that was built did include condominium space for commercial uses. I think CCV took the entire second floor, and I believe they own it, but I would have to double check on that. And then the top floor was taken by the hospital, the Northwest Medical Center, leased out the top floor with an option to purchase it, I think, after 10 years. So, wasn't your traditional condominium setup, but that'd probably be the closest one that I can think of that we have worked on.
Thank you.
Jigs, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I have, and this is probably more for Gary, is the mixed use. Why, it would seem as though somewhere along the line, job creation was a pretty crucial aspect of the Island Street spot. And the feeling was that housing was available elsewhere, and we wanted to concentrate on commercial or light industrial. I don't know what commercial, if commercial is retail or office, I guess I'd be willing to broaden that to be light industrial as well. But this is being presented as a mixed concept. What's the
Correct, yeah,
reason?
so, with the area-wide plan, which was created with, public input over 2 years, so all of the property owners on the island, businesses, stakeholders, the boards, nonprofits, the public, participated in, so each of those groups had, public engagement meetings at 3 different points in the area-wide plan. And they also performed some market research. And some of the island where Robertson Paper was maintained in the plan for light industrial or professional offices as that stakeholder input provided. We also had various the agencies that are stakeholders on the island, so the railroad, the hydro company, they were at the meetings. And already, I mean, it wasn't to the way the crisis is laid out today, but already when we started the plan, a housing shortage was being trumpeted from a lot of quarters. And one of the important things for adding housing is the municipal water and sewer that Bellows Falls has. And so while there is some area outside of town for housing development, the village, the smart growth principles, adding units where you have water and sewer, you have neighborhoods where you have commercial amenities that folks moving into apartments like to have. So whether it's cafes or retail or restaurants, any of those types of amenities are really important, along with the residential above them for vibrancy and having foot traffic in the community. So the area-wide plan took into account everyone's input. The landscape architects maintained that higher wage job creation on one point, but also with the train station there being transit-oriented development, has that smart growth principle of commercial in the first story and residential above it. I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
it doesn't, but that's okay. I mean, I think certainly the emphasis was on jobs for that location as opposed to residential.
For all of the island.
Not for all of the island.
No, for Robertson, yes.
For Robertson,
So that's been
yeah.
maintained, that's what I'm saying, that was maintained as light industrial for jobs.
Right,
That, the Robertson
but
lot.
now you're talking about that site as mixed use.
No.
Just Bridge Street lot.
Tonight we're talking about Bridge Street parking lot. We're not touching Robertson yet.
Oh,
Robertson, we're holding out for the light industrial, we're holding out for the job creation on Robertson, as the BFADC board wanted. Bridge Street parking lot is the one along the canal across from the hotel deck and next to David Buckley's
Old office.
building there, office building.
Right.
And just to answer Jeff's question with the condos, because we did check that out when we were looking at new market tax credits. The new market tax credits bring the cost of housing down, so that even though it's market rate, just means that there's not an income restriction. Like you can live there no matter, so if you're an engineer and you're making 3 figures and you want to move to Bellows Falls, you can, but it doesn't mean it's going to cost so much that someone making median wage couldn't afford it. The tools we have help with that, and However, they don't allow you to condoize until the 7-year buyback period is up. So you could convert to condos after the 7 years in that model. I don't know if that's the model we'll end up with, but it could. I mean,
And that would be determined by the developer at that point.
well, it would be determined by this pre-development work we do with White and Burke, and then if the RFP looked for a developer, and it would depend on the folks who provide the new market tax credits. So they're limited, the amount of new market tax credits that the federal government gives out to different organizations, and then those organizations would have to choose us. So there's a couple of different layers. Like I say, it's complicated why we're getting professional help work through them. I know the big picture, I've done that research, but to actually do it and succeed, and the professional work is really important.
Yes.
So the game plan could be in development that you were looking in 7 years to make a condominium, if that would help investment in a long-term kind of way. I mean, a lot of people want to stay in the community, want to live in the community. And if there was an option, that was part from the start, that in 7 years, how would that fit into the economic development of a project, or give it some bolster in 7 years' time, the money to come in? And I guess I'm just trying to understand the project. So the project is something that would happen in that parking lot area at the Bridge Street, okay?
Right.
And could be a mixed-use thing, could be a lot of kinds of things that could happen there, develop.
So, Joe, just out of curiosity, if we were able to have an engagement, what's just a schedule of timing, so the board gets a sense of, we started working together sometime in December, what's a reasonable sort of calendar that they could sort of look to for a project like this?
I would say that if, if we were going to start this with, bringing a civil engineer on board to do some preliminary due diligence, preliminary planning of the site, it sounds like we're only considering one site at this time, but doing some of that work. So we have a good understanding of what the issues are for development, how big of a building could we expect to get on there. I would say that would probably take, probably 2 months, maybe 3 months to get that initial study done, because they're all pretty busy right now. So maybe like 2 to 3 months to get that study done. Once we get that information, then we could go with the RFP process. And again, that's usually, again, I haven't given it much thought. I'm going to say maybe probably another 6 months before you, go through that process, have meetings with potential development partners, evaluate their proposals, and then, deal with whatever issues might come up, get those resolved, and then negotiate some sort of purchase and sale agreement, development agreement, and get that executed. So probably a best case scenario is that we have somebody on board, with the purchase and sale executed, the development agreement by, next summer.
Okay.
Sometime would be.
What about, has the underlying ground in this section ever been tested for?
So that's part of the due diligence. While White and Burke is starting that section, we would work with Wyndham Regional on a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments. And then whatever the civil engineer work that Joe has going, like other geotechnical exploration or whatever that due diligence is that the civil engineers do, those would work in parallel. So part of the due diligence Joe was talking about is the ground. geotechnical aspects, the a part that the town would do is the brownfields, looking at the phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, but it would seem to me that could be a whole game changer to understand what's there. You
So
know, to
there-
go in tandem, I don't understand the tandem thing. It seems as though you'd want to know that this is a clean site. And if it isn't a clean site, what does that impose before you go ahead with an RFP?
So the cleanup is not, it's not as time-consuming or complicated on so like the Robertson paper is complicated by all the different kinds of contamination, all the different uses it had, the buildings that were there, the forge, the petroleum for melting the wax. This parking lot was railroad tracks. There were never any buildings west of David Buckley's and Duncan Johnson's ozone buildings. They were just railroad tracks. So the amount of contamination there is likely to be some, but not complicated. And having no buildings to test and assess, or materials, no drums, it won't be a long, complicated process.
I got 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a Gary question and a Joe question. So for purposes of what we're talking about tonight, Gary, we could, if you look at page 2, we actually should scratch the second sentence about the secondary site is the.
No, that's not true. It's not true. It's just that it's not.
Well, you said,
It's
just
not
said a
part-
minute ago that tonight we're just talking about the Buckley lot.
So the one of the things with the new market tax credits to do housing with is that the housing can never create more revenue than 70% of the project. So a way to ensure that is to have another part of the project that's all commercial. It's like Jiggs was talking about, job creation, light industrial. But that part of the project is not something that we could talk about in public session.
So we are talking about both light sites though.
Yes.
Even
It
though,
would
even though a minute ago you said tonight we were just talking about the Buckley
Well, the
lot.
mixed use would only be on the Bridge Street
The
lot.
mixed use would be in the
On the
Bridge Street lot, and then
Right.
there would be a piece of the project on another lot to be named later,
Okay, I got it.
or an executive
But
session.
that would not be a mixed use, that would be a commercial.
Commercial, all right.
Right.
I was just confused on that.
Sure.
And Joe, I was just curious, have you or anybody from your firm seen these locations?
No,
Actually,
no, I haven't been down there to look at these yet.
no. I was just curious. All right, thanks.
Anything else?
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure, absolutely.
This is to Joe. Do you have any intelligence, or are you doing any research on the move from, people working at home that may adjust some of this commercial and home situations where people working from home maybe want a little bigger and less commercial spray? Do you have any research, or are you doing any research that would inform us on that?
So far, everything that we've seen about, just the impact of people working from home, are they going to go back into the office spaces, has really just been anecdotal. It hasn't been really long enough for us to really understand what the impact of that has been. So yeah, I don't have any good data that really says exactly what the trend is. I mean, most people think that office space is going to remain high vacancy rates for a long while, but for how long, nobody really knows.
So I guess, are you seeing any trend in the funding packages and interest from developers to address that as well? That, I guess, my bigger question, are you seeing it, and can you inform us as that goes?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been seeing is that the only type of office type development we're seeing is from specific businesses that need to build offices for their operations. we're not seeing any new, speculative office buildings being constructed just because the office market is so soft right now and it's probably going to continue for a while. Industrial, I'm not familiar with the market down there, but here in Chittenden County, industrial warehouse has been strong, mostly because there just isn't a lot of it out there. It's a supply and demand thing where there's not a lot of land zoned for industrial or warehousing development, and what buildings there are full. So that's been a strong category up in this area. And again, I don't really know the market down there. I suspect it's probably not as strong as it is here. But right now the strong demand is in housing, and it's like that all over the state. And I think that's why I think it makes, or the committee that worked on that area-wide plan probably recommended that a mixed-use development, or maybe just I don't know if they recommend just a housing development, but that's where the demand is right now. And I think that's where the best chances of finding a developer who would be interested in doing a project is gonna lie.
Thanks, that answered my question. Thank you.
Anything else? So any action that we're looking?
We're gonna talk later in the ARPA section about
That's
this
what I thought.
specifically.
Okay.
Yep. But just wanted to have Joe and answer some questions. So Joe, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you
Appreciate
very
your
much.
time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, then the District 5 issues update.
So I put a memo in your packets just as an update, just as general information. So just to hit some highlights. First of all, Alyssa has spent a tremendous amount of time on this, trying to ascertain 3 different problems. The current accounts and whether the current account balances are accurate, whether or not the actual structure of the account, so if it's a multifamily or an individual, if they're actually the correct billing, because we've been billing the same amounts for many years now, even though there's been changes and people in the district have actually changed the types and the quantities of connections. So we think we have a better handle on that. And then finally, the third piece is finding what happened with the past due billings to try to figure out what catches them up, so that when we do the billing, we'll be at a point where we can have a public meeting in December, and it looks like we're gonna do December 11th. So we have a date pretty much secured. That'll be in Westminster. Our goal at that meeting is to have basically the updated bills, so the billing cycle that was missed back in 2022, the most recent billing in September of this year, which was not done, and then the updated structure of who should be being billed and what amounts are being billed, so that that's all accurate. And then at the end of that meeting, if people can provide information to us that our records don't match up with or their records don't match up with the records that were maintained by the district, we'll try and figure out what the correct balances would be. And then whatever's not paid at that point would be subject to a lien after a period of time, with an updated agreement, pretty much like the water district, where they would just become utility customers, and going forward, the billing and the whole process would be just like any Village of Fellow BF utility customer. So still steps to be worked through, but I just want to give the board some information as to what we have found out to date, where we think we are in terms of what we think is owed, and then ultimately the next sort of steps, which will be this public meeting in Westminster in December.
That's on the 11th?
Yes, we were looking at different dates, and that's the one that seemed to work best for them.
Jake?
I'm assuming, did you say that the September billing has gone out?
No, we're still working on the September billing of this year. So it never went out. So their treasurer resigned before that billing went out. So she did not bill September of '22 or September of '23. Just never submitted bills. To her.
We didn't submit a bill.
Oh, no, we billed them by the agreement. So we have always billed the district.
So we billed,
The problem was the district treasurer did not bill the members of the district to collect the money for those 2 billing cycles.
so they're annual cycles, they're not semi-annual.
They have not been billing on a consistent basis, so I couldn't even tell you, Jake said it's semi-annual.
Alyssa.
So.
I have
Yes.
been working on this, and this last few days after this memo went out, I figured out a few more pieces to the puzzle. In 2016, they were billing 46 residences, which is what we assumed we had on the sewer system. And so that's what we were billing the district for, was 46, 39 single homes and 7 multifamily. Since then, and today, so today I have a whole list of everybody that's been being billed kind of inconsistently, sort of consistently, but a little inconsistently. And that number is 56. So when I do that math of how much roughly she is sending out to bill to the customers, I come up with almost exactly the same number that the QuickBooks has. So the 30,000 that we know is past due, the 24,000 that is for this September billing, and then the extra 10 people that they apparently have on the sewer system is another 58,000. So that within a couple $100 is exactly what the QuickBooks says is owed to the district right now. So I've sent out a sheet to Rob and the sewer guys to have them go out and figure out exactly who is connected out there. And there's a list of 56 people that we assume are, because she's been billing them. A handful of them haven't paid anything ever. So it's kind of like, well, are they really on, or are they just not paying? We don't know that until somebody tells us whether they're connected or not. And then there's another 12 that we believe are not connected, but I'd like to make sure. And then there's another 14 that don't show up on any list of, are they connected? Are they not connected? There's just no info on them at all. So I think we need to get that data so that we know going forward what we actually have connected to our sewer.
So if you add all them up, that could potentially be 82 connections.
Yeah, there's 12 of those that we are, well, 3 of those 12 that I talked about, for some reason, they're being billed through us already. So we know they're connected and they're being billed and they're paying. But then there's, that handful of others that we just don't know for sure. The district wasn't billing them, but we don't know what they were doing and what's right and what's wrong until we assess the entire picture. So it would be nice if we could get that information for that December 11th meeting, because then we would know exactly
Right.
what's happening.
Alyssa, you said on the additional 10, the billing here that we see on Scott's memo is based on 46,
Correct.
Right.
the 30 and the 24. How
Yes.
much did you estimate the other 10 represented in terms of unbilled
Over the
revenue?
last 6 years, that 10 would be a rough estimate of around $58,000, maybe 60.
Because they haven't been billed.
So no, they've been billed by the district They
Yeah.
haven't paid the district, but they've been billed. We have not billed the district because we didn't know there was those 10 extra connections.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, all right. Scott, what, is it your plan to make sure that this field work is done before the 11th?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
Rod is on
So-
board with,
The problem is to do some of this, we're gonna have to smoke test, and sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge for people in order to see if they actually do have a connection. So if they won't let us in the house, that's the only other way we can do
I
it.
see, okay.
I'm hoping, and again, I don't know what level of cooperation we're gonna get here. So, but we'll try to get all of that by the 11th.
Okay.
And as I've said multiple times, and I'll say again, and I'll say it to the members of the district in December, our finance department cannot verify the accuracy of any of the bookkeeping by the district. So the numbers that we're working with came out of their QuickBooks system and came out of their computer, but in terms of any kind of, it's never been audited as far as I know. And I can't verify any of the accuracy of any of the accounts that are in it. So we'll do the best we can with that information. But in terms of vouching for its accuracy, we just can't. You know, we're just gonna have to assume that it's as reasonably accurate. But I imagine some people will feel very concerned about that.
Yeah,
But
but it sounds like the way we're heading is that you're basically creating a program or whatever that basically shows 56 residences.
right, we'll have a
And then
verified,
tracking each of the 56, or more, depending, in terms of what they have paid, what they can verify that they paid, and then what they owe.
Right.
Yeah.
and then there'll be a new District 5 utility agreement that will then update the old North Westminster agreement so that they are in effect going to be just Bellows Falls
Correct,
utility
yeah.
customers,
So they'll get billed just like everybody
just
else.
like anybody else. And all of this
Will go away.
interim billing through third parties will all disappear. They'll be directly billed and handled as any other utility customer. If they're in arrears, they have certain, opportunities, and then after that, we take steps if we have to, like shut them off or do what we have to do.
I'm just curious, like, looking ahead, when, depending on how things go, what's like a time frame where, like, this will be done and they'll be regular customers billed like normal? Like a year from now?
The next billing that we would do normally would be March. I don't think we'll get all of that finished in time for March. My guess will be by next September.
Right, so,
Right.
less than a year.
We'll probably still have another billing that we'll have to do in March, and by September, we should have everything in place, as well as making sure that on their recorded deeds at Westminster, that there is a notation that they are a district utility customer, so that if somebody sells property and they have, some sort of obligation to us,
Yeah.
they then have to satisfy that obligation before the property can transfer. Because that's been part of the problem here, is that a lot of these properties, for various reasons, never satisfied, what was owed to us, they just passed. So there's gonna be some people that are gonna be looking at things that probably happened way before they owned the property. And that's gonna be a conversation we'll have to have as a board as to how we want to address those concerns.
Anything else on this?
No, so the next steps for us is we will get a letter from the current chair that we'll be putting out, and I think we're still trying to get a billing out, Alyssa. I don't know if we have an exact date when we want to bill the current arrears. I was hoping to get it out sometime before the December meeting.
Yeah, so I think what I'm gonna do is send out the actual September bill just by itself, like she normally would have done.
Right.
Because there are, of the 56 people, they're, half of them do pay. So, and they're caught up to date as far as everything that they know, right? There's that September billing of 22 that they were never billed, so that's not their fault necessarily right now. So if I send out the new bills from September, we'll get some of that money in the meantime.
Right.
And you'll be billing that directly to the customer or to North Westminster?
No, to the customer. We've already billed North Westminster, and I have already created all of the bills in the QuickBooks for that billing. I just need to sort through them, check them one more time, and mail them out.
With the updated memo from their current chair, so that they're aware of this meeting, so.
Anything else?
I just want to say again, thank you to Alyssa. This has been a real headache to go through this and trying to figure this out. And I think she's done a lot of very detailed work to try to make this as accurate as possible. And I do appreciate it because it's frustrating to try to figure this one out. It's a mess.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3, updated ARPA projects.
So a couple things here since we last met. The biggest change or challenge is some of our project timelines here on the Gross boiler. Gary was part of a CDBG presentation, a week ago roughly, Gary?
Yes.
This is one of the last pieces of funding that Marty and Gross were trying to come up with. It's a $250,000 CDBG grant, which is part of their overall $1,375,000 for their replacement of their heating system. I believe if that's in place, then she is fully funded at that point. So, which would be good news, then she can order the boiler. And then things would, I think, be able to move along so that investment, the first one that we've talked about, would be pretty much fully, basically would be spent well in advance of that 2024 date. The 44 steps, we still don't have a real good number on that. We're going to continue to work on seeing if we can get some engineering to give us a better project cost on that. That's still just a placeholder number, so that will require some attention. The Lula lift, we do now have new numbers. If you remember the last time, we had that allocated for $200,000. With the approval of our waiver and the working with the company, we were able to reduce some of that pricing significantly. So we think we can get the old materials out, the new material, a new car in, and the electric upgrades roughly for about $110,000. So what that does is free up a couple of things that we talked about in terms of our overall housing and redevelopment initiatives, and I think Gary had 3 separate memos to sort of cover some of that proposed spending. The first obviously being the White and Burke mixed use engagement, which would be the $60,000. The second, Gary, you want to go into your second memo on the wayfinding and the leveraging the downtown transportation funds?
Sure, so the community process input, the high scoring one for the village was the transportation connectivity. And we've had a couple of different memos earlier on a few months ago of a complicated couple of pages about the transportation master plan that went into a Better Connections grant. This kind of boils it down to the pieces that are in play right now. That $40,000 of ARPA funds would leverage $64,400 of grant funds, which would identify. So you would have the consultants work with all of the organizations, the stakeholders in Bellows Falls and Rockingham to ensure the common vision and the 20 sites that we want to have wayfinding at. It would include design work for both QR codes that would bring folks in the wayfinding to a landing page on the website with information about the destination they were visiting, whether it's a trail map or whether it's a museum type space or the fish ladder or whatever it is, that information would be on the landing page. And the design work for signs that all have the same, some similar design elements to them, so they're recognizable as part of Bellows Falls, part of Rockingham. So that would be on the sign design. This would include the production of the 20 different signs. But part of the work is identifying existing signage and can things be consolidated or or removing some that's no longer accurate and replacing it. The collateral design work for rack cards, maps, website work. So all of those pieces are included in this. And the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative grant, which is the one that produced the pump track and the walkable Rockingham, the Walk the Rock program, where folks are going into businesses around town and getting stickers showing selfies of them in different trails. And then the USDA Rural Business Development Grant for technical assistance would provide another $10,000 to finish that off. The budget of $104,400 includes a contingency for when signs are actually getting produced and materials printed with for potential inflationary issues. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, do folks have any questions?
Who would manage this project? Who would be the project/program management?
Yeah, so we would perform an RFQ process to pick the most qualified consultants that have done similar work.
It would basically, the programming responsibilities, checks to make it happen would fall between myself, Gary, Megan, and Betsy. So the four of us would work on the implementation.
Yeah, we would be a steering committee for oversight and accountability, making sure that the milestones were met. The consultants were understanding the project and implementing it as intended.
And the other funding sources, can we assume that that's a given?
It's not a given. The VOREC program, we had a very good first round, a very successful. At the state conference last year, they recognized the Walk the Rock program as a, what do you call it, a model for how to get the tracking, how much the trails are used and how to tie in the economic development, how to tie in the businesses with the trail work, and that was funded by VOREC. And that grant is closing out right now. And so that does help make us competitive in this next round as well. So I think we have a better than average chance with the VOREC. We have a very competitive program, and we're coming off some good success with them.
And this encompasses all of the various walking and bike trails, et cetera. Is it all inclusive of?
So no, so it's 20 sites that the Walk Bike Committee will participate in, the Bellows Falls Historical Society, Bellows Falls Downtown Development Alliance, all of the organizations that work with various destinations will be part of the stakeholders that the consultants are looking to get to align the visions, make sure everyone's on the same page. We pick the top 20 priorities and where to have the signage. So, for instance, someone is traveling up the highway and they see that, oh, there's some free electric vehicle charging stations in Bellows Falls. I'm gonna pull off and charge my car and find something to do. How do they know what to do? So we're gonna make sure that the wayfinding is someone can come into town, not know where they are, and identify what are the assets Bellows Falls has to offer. What are they? How can I find them? So that's kind of the view that we'll be looking at for where to place the wayfinding and what should be incorporated there. And it's a pretty robust team. There's a lot of these organizations very active. Historical Society, BIFTA, had a meeting at the library talking about some of the alignment for design images. So whether it's a Bellows Falls issue, a Rockingham issue, a nonprofit like a Historical Society trail, they all have some similar elements, so they're recognizable as part of here, part of Rockingham, part of Bellows Falls. Even though they'll have some individual identifiers, they'll have same design elements to be recognizable. So there's been a lot of legwork done over the past couple of years getting to this point. We think we're in a good place, and part of why our grant applications will be very competitive.
The reference to a website here, that's a website that's specifically for wayfinding, or that's part of the Rockingham?
Part of upgrading the Town of Rockingham website, Town of Rockingham, Bellows Falls.
So this funding would take care of the redesign, or any the other funding necessary for the web design?
It could take care of this.
I was curious as to Connor's comment with regards to this. Is there any tie-in to what you've been doing, working on?
On the trails up at Oak Hill. So I mean, our signage is terrible on Oak Hill, and I think whether or not, I don't know if this specific project would necessarily address that signage. It could, but yeah, listening to this, what I was thinking about is to have a solid foundation would be useful for Wakota, at least, for when we do decide we have enough trails or enough complexity up there that we need to spend that time building out our signage. It'd be useful to have kind of a template or something to go off of, right? So we don't feel like we need to reinvent the wheel with signage ourselves. If there's a toolkit, right, and you say, here's the font you use and here's the logo.
Yes.
That's that.
And here's the QR code that someone would scan,
Exactly.
so they'll be able to get there. Same with the Heritage Trail down along the riverfront. If we do the extension past the sewer plant down to Paper Mill Road, all that would be incorporated into that.
Yeah, because I can tell you from our perspective, like, we don't like making signs, right? We like building trails, and I think everyone likes doing their thing, and so it's always an afterthought, which is why you probably see a lot of bad signs, right? And so if there is some useful unified language and look that the town's using, I could see that being useful.
And some of them are as simple as, right, we have those municipal parking signs, some of them are ancient, point towards municipal parking, and not quite sure what they point to, some of them.
Well, if the purpose is to try to attract people to Bellows Falls, or Rockingham, Bellows Falls.
Right.
And we're working on this bike trails, other than just riding your bike down the street.
Right.
It would just seem logical to include that, it would seem.
Absolutely.
And
then sort of the last piece within this larger umbrella, and this is, we've talked with Ridwig and about infill development, and I know we've had multiple presentations at tri-boards and other meetings, but this is sort of now, Gary's most recent memo is sort of outlining more specifics about a specific ask for funding, how potentially that funding would be allocated, and ultimately, it's a reinvestment opportunity as well for bringing derelict properties and underperforming properties onto the tax rolls so that we can see some longer term benefits and hopefully in some of these neighborhoods, maybe spur some additional development if they see these new projects going on. So maybe Gary, you want to jump into that last piece?
Sure, yeah, so all the things that the town has run into here that Scott and Alyssa and that board with for sale properties or demolishing properties, all of the incremental development work that Ridwig has done in the community and educating with the tri boards and how to, working with the state program for infill redevelopment, all of the input that you folks have given when the idea first came up about, how you're going to make sure how the money is spent or what happens if the project isn't done. We put all those together, and last week with Ridwig, we came up with these final details incorporating everyone's interests. So I think we identified what the money could be spent on. We modeled some of the way the money's distributed around the revolving loan fund when working with folks that had to improve their buildings. There had been some experience where just a loan was given and then the money was not spent on things that were supposed to go into the building. And so the way that the loan fund has been administrating that is that for building improvements, the improvement is made and then the contractors invoice the town, and so the fund pays for it. So up to $25,000 per site for the 6 sites. Eligible uses, we looked at all of the things. So obviously one of the goals was to make it attractive for a developer, an incremental developer, someone with tight resources to be able to take a lot like 10 Church Place and redevelop it. And so the folks in this group all do that work and understand the challenges. And so we identified things that upfront costs that make it hard to get into that, whether it's carrying costs of the property, paying taxes while you own it, yet you can't rent any units for 6 months or 10 months. Whether it's getting some brownfields work done or surveys, or whether it's some actual construction work, whatever it is, those pieces, $25,000 is eligible, but it would be, the invoices would come to the town, to the development office to pay, as opposed to a check just being written to each prospective developer, so that we know it's going into that property to make it easier for that property to be redeveloped. Addressing some of the concerns you folks have had when we first brought this up, there's the 2 to 5 year clawback. So the permitting and groundbreaking has to begin within 2 years, and the development has to be completed within 5 years. We put some priorities on it because, so say we have 6 lots that we can fund and 8 different developers were applying, which that would be a great problem if we do run into that. Prioritizing developers that lived in the community, local residents. And so we listed, kind of a triage of how the committee would prioritize that, and are looking for a committee to review applications that would be a village trustee, a town select person, planning commission member, a RIG organizing committee member, and the development office. And also talked about if that committee felt like it would be helpful to have to ask the municipal manager and an at-large community member to participate also. That could be a piece of it. And so, looking for that $150,000 allocation to get incentivized 6 lots for redevelopment. There is a piece in there about, so some of the talk with incremental development alliances, as young couples are starting out and becoming renters, wouldn't it be great if they could build equity and own a property? So we talked about two things. One, the infill project that we worked on with the state, 2 to 4 unit properties over single-family residence are, what's being recommended for lots and for what the Homes Act that came out of the state legislature is encouraging. And so we put a priority in here for the maximum amount of units that the zoning allows on each lot, and for them to encourage home ownership, the condo model that Jeff was talking about earlier. So a young couple is getting one of those 4 units, they can be an owner, they can build equity in it, even though it's an apartment on a 2 or 4 unit. I think that's pretty, I don't know if
I'm assuming that these sites are all Bellows Falls sites.
yes, all the ones that we've
It's not
identified are
written
all-
in here.
What's that?
It should be written in. This is Bellows Falls.
We could certainly put that in there, because most of, all the sites we visited are all
Yeah,
BI.
everyone knew.
So
Yes.
Since we're
We could certainly
using
make that specific.
Bellows Falls ARPA
Right,
funds, I think it would be
yes,
appropriate to.
makes sense.
Bellows Falls. The other
That's where the
question-
water and sewer is, and that's, yeah. So I think you're right, I think that is the intention.
The clawback, how would that work? Would they be required to deed the property over to the town or the village, or how would the quote clawback
Yeah, I
work?
think it would be a lien on the property.
The lien for the money invested, so I think if the.
Most of the time, Jigs, they'll do a lien and a promissory note, and then it'd be secured by the asset.
Yeah.
And so then if there's a sale or something, you do have rights, as a secured creditor. But I think all 3 of these proposals, I think, fit into some of the Camoin objectives when we went back to our original conversation with the community about things that were important. And I think they each also sort of, and we never really formally agreed to do these, but I think every one of the projects that we've tried to propose has other sources of grant funding, so we're trying to leverage these funds as much as possible. And even though we never formally approved that concept, I think that's always been our goal when Gary and I are trying to put these together for your consideration. So with that being said, I think the timing of these is probably right for us to start that portion, at least these 3 specific asks, with the last piece being the sewer plant. I did hear from the Long Island Sound Futures Fund grant, the one that we had proposed for the 900,000 did not get approved. So we still have our $1 million from the state clean water fund. And so we'll go back and see if there's some additional funds we can try to get and get a higher prioritization on our dryer project. So we would still use the 200,000 as a match, but we're still working on hopefully some other funds to leverage against that $1 million that we already know that we've gone out and secured. So all of that being said, that sort of brings you to your full 880. So you'd have projects working in various states of completion here, but feel confident that they would all be done and completed by the statutory date, so that we would be able to spend all the money, at least encumber all the money by the end of 2024. So.
Yeah, go ahead. The one that I'm struggling with is the 60,000. Okay, I think the 40 and the 150, I think that's, we've talked enough about that. I think putting the details together is very helpful. But the 60 is, it's to me, I would I'm not saying that the thing doesn't have merit, but I think
Right.
we're putting the cart before the horse. And I just don't think, this is a new site that's, we've got a problem with the site on Oak Street where the
Grange Hall.
Grange Hall was, for God's sakes. I mean, to start with RFPs and stuff like that, when we don't even know that this is a property that can be developed, is just, to me, is pushing it. The fellow that was on the thing, he's never been to Bellows Falls. I mean,
Right.
Business is good in St. Albans, I guess, but, this is a much different market. We happen to be on the New Hampshire border, not the New York border. And, I wasn't impressed with that aspect of it, all that stuff. And I'm looking at what these principals, want to charge for their time. I don't blame them. That's great if you can get it, but, and then they would have a 30% interest in whatever value was created. It's sort of like, wow. But I would not be supportive of that 60,000. I just think it's.
I think these mixed-use developments, Jigs, especially if we're trying to attract private investment, I mean, you can see what our track record is over the last 20 years. It's pretty much
I
zero.
don't question.
So,
I don't question
we're trying to figure out a way to get some, right, to get
what you're
something.
trying to do.
Right.
I'm just saying that
Right.
I'd rather spend this 60,000 on something that's more immediate.
Right.
And have a better feel. And like I said, there may be other entities that have more experience in this area than this White and Burke. But I don't question the merits, I'm just questioning the timing of.
Could I respond to the timing a little bit?
Yeah.
So the way the proposal is structured, the $60,000 isn't all for them. Some of it is for civil engineering, geotechnical work. The funds that they get, there's not a guaranteed minimum amount. So the due diligence happens first. So right away, they're starting with identifying a civil engineer, getting them on board. We would have some civil engineering costs, but it would identify if the site was undevelopable, we would need to find that out one way or another at some point. And that will be done first. So if it turns out it is undevelopable, then there will be no money. There's no one saying that they're going to get $60,000 or even that they're going to get $40,000. It would stop right there is the way the proposal and the proposal is and the way the contract would be written.
But it would seem that the need for them would come later. It just seems to me that there are probably companies locally that are more familiar with who we are here, that could do some of this spade work type of thing. And I question signing a contract with these people.
So Joe has only worked in St. Albans, but White and Burke worked in Springfield. They worked in Brattleboro, Bennington, on the TIF districts in those communities.
Well, anyway, whatever.
Okay. Just responding to
Got it.
concerns.
Yeah, so staying on White and Burke, yeah, I am open-minded to it, but I will say I share some of Jiggs's skepticism with it. I am curious, so we're committed, if we made a motion for $60,000, not all of which would be going to them, there would be then future asks for more payment, correct? Right, reading the fee structure.
Supplemental funding. Supplemental.
Once you had the assessed valuation improvements, there are some additional fees that are payable.
So we would
Right.
implicitly be committing to that in the future as well, just
They're
point of
part of
clarity
it.
there.
But their expertise is bringing in the private developers with the money and the expertise to.
So the $60,000 would go against that. So say the assessed value is at a certain point up until a certain level, they get a commission on it. But it does max out, and it does, the $60,000 does go again, or not 60,000, whatever they were paid for this RFP work and identifying the private developer and working up the development agreements would come off of that future supplemental.
And that only happens if the development takes.
When it's
built.
completed and it's,
Once you
up
have the
and
asset.
running and paying taxes.
Right.
And I would be interested in the Brattleboro and Springfield projects because they are right there in our neck of the woods. I think they're probably more,
We can get you more information, for
Comparable.
sure.
yeah.
Right.
And clearly, I mean, you guys think that this is a complicated project that low chance of success if we say something, we want to do it in-house.
I'm not sure that we would be able to reach out and get into the development community with any, with the types of developers that you need to get in contact with. I don't think we'd have the ability to get to those people
And,
on our own.
and in a roundabout way, it's been in-house now for how many years, Gary?
Yeah, 20, 30.
20?
Well, because we haven't been able to attract, or we haven't invested in having this caliber of,
Oh, I know, but that's what I'm saying, so we already have a track record of trying to do it ourselves, for the lack of a better term.
so Jake says that we're putting the cart before the horse, but, we haven't put a horse there either.
Well, what I'm saying is, this particular parcel, this is the first time I've heard about this parcel. Okay, the very first time.
But it's been part of the community process that went on for 2 years.
Right.
I don't know that anyone on this board, except for I sat at. It was a community, we were all invited to attend. There were 3
Oh,
meetings.
no, I get that. But I'm just saying that to sign a contract with these people, when we don't know what bad stuff is in the soil or anything like that, is, to me, is.
Which is all part of that due diligence too, right? To do the phase 1, phase 2, to get all of that information. Because it could turn out, Jake, you're right, that it's just not a developable lot based on environmental problems or other problems.
But,
So,
I don't wanna drag it out, but what about the fact that it's so close to the canal? Does that have any bearing? I would think it would, but thinking of it.
It'll be part of the engineering and the geo.
yeah, I don't think there's any soils concerns that it's unstable, right? There's always a challenge whenever you're working around the hydro, just because of their protection of their asset there. But all of those things are legit.
I'm on the canal.
This adds up to 800.
Right,
And we did 58
58 for the roof, right,
for the roof, right?
which is not on there, which I will add to the final,
Okay.
the next memo. So we'll go back and get you some additional information on some of the more local initiatives, so the board can get a sense of that and see if that's
And then
something.
maybe on the 12th, we can
Sure,
just say, hey, are we gonna approve this 60K or aren't we?
right.
Right.
I
And
think that's,
the steps, the 44 step, I mean, they had that fellow that did some work there.
A lot of that's
I
cosmetic.
walked the steps.
yeah, a lot of it's cosmetic. The stuff
Yeah,
that we
it's
have to do is more structural, and I just haven't been able to get a good number from anybody on the structural repairs. So I'm still working on it and hoping to get something for you.
As to what exactly would happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a reasonable estimate of cost, so that this number might be way off. It's a placeholder, Jigs, honestly. Yeah.
Right, it's 3 sections, so I mean, one section could be bad, all 3 could be bad, one could be good.
They all have various
I mean,
levels of concern, if you look at it, right? When you stand there if you look at it underneath and looking at some of the erosion, I think there's concern, for sure.
Wait,
Can I make a motion? Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we allocate and expend $150,000 of the ARPA funds to the lot development for infill housing as presented on the quest for the Ridley.
is there a second?
I'll second.
So motion's been made that we would spend $150,000 of the ARPA funds for the housing/development initiatives. Any discussion?
So just one more quick clarifying question. So with this, the funds, would those 6 $25,000 grants need to be awarded by December 2024? Or is this, or it's just like an account, right? Like what counts as it being?
Money goes into the account, so it does not need to be, correct?
I don't believe you have to have the, right, the line item expenses, as long as it's been appropriated.
We appropriate it into the development fund, so this would be,
Right.
okay, great.
And I think everything has to be spent by 26, if I'm.
Yes, so there's that
Right.
second date when it has to be expended. You have to
Right.
decide what you're gonna do with it by 2024, and you have to do it by 2026.
Right, it has to be, right, physically done,
Correct.
or they'll claw back the money.
So
I'm
a
not sure.
motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, all in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the motion carries.
Have we, under grass, the 115 and 25, have we voted all those?
Yeah.
Yes.
You did vote
Okay,
those,
so those are done.
those are done.
So maybe what we can do, Scott, is just kind of set them up and say,
Right, we'll
this is
start,
what we,
we'll start tracking it.
you know, start, you know, just a little star, and the
Yep.
star means that we've made the motion and,
You know, that would
And
be
we'll come
good.
back, give us some more information on the other, those few other items.
okay. And then also, some more information on, White and Burke and their projects around here.
Springfield and Brattleboro, and that.
Right,
Yep.
For the 12th.
I have
meeting.
one more question
Yeah,
pertaining to
absolutely.
White and Burke. So in the packet, Gary, you included 2 pages from Stevens and Associates?
Well, so those are
Which
the
goes
area-wide plan, the fact sheets for the mixed-use development.
Okay. Does Stevens and Associates have the ability to do what White and Burke did? Is there any?
So they have a division called M&S Development that, if they have the capacity, they will. They're doing the Bennington area-wide plan implementation.
We can certainly talk to them, Jeff, and see if they're,
I'm just wondering, you know,
Another
folks
option.
want a second opinion or some sort of,
right,
see what it is, there's, or at least, you know, some of the similar community, as similar community as Bellows Falls that, you know, we could speak with.
Anything else? Then we'll move on to item 4 on the.
Sorry.
oh,
Can we
yeah.
also, I mean, I feel comfortable moving forward with the wayfinding as well. Can I make another motion?
Sure.
I'd move to allocate $40,000 of the ARPA funds for the wayfinding project.
I'll second.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded to appropriate $40,000 for the wayfinding project. Any discussion? Saying no discussion, all in favor would say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the 40K has been appropriated. Anything else then on that?
Nope.
If not, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is capital project update, water and sewer.
So just on a couple things, and we'll touch on them briefly here. So on the Kissel Hill project, we did meet with the Compass School today, just to talk about, there's gonna be a required easement for the pipe, for the new pipe, for the replacement of the asbestos pipe. So we did meet with them today, so their board is gonna look at that and come back to us. I'm hoping that there won't be any concern with that. The next thing we'll do then is reapply, because we'll go back on the intended use plan for that drinking water state revolving fund. And that's a 50% subsidy on that project. So right now, the last time we costed this project out, it was roughly $1,120,000. I asked Dufresne just to make sure to check their numbers, to make sure that we're still in that neighborhood. And then once we get the board gets notification that we were successful on the subsidy, then we would have to do a bond referendum for May as part of our annual village meeting. And then the funds are available usually in July. And then project would be then fully funded and ready for construction. The tank lining project, the contractor did hold his price. We have all our permits now from the state. Everything has been approved, so as soon as the weather breaks in the spring, the tank folks will be out here. And that project,
Drive one, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that project will be underway. And then the final one is that lead line inventory project. So we finished the first phase of we did it in-house. A lot of places outsourced it to third parties, but Brian did a lot of that in-house, and we had the extra person, if you remember, to help out in the department. So we submitted our request back to them for roughly $61,000. They pay you based on per record that you reviewed and submitted. So we have an invoice in now for $61,800 for that first phase of that project.
Now, has that work been done? Have we funded it to this point, or?
Well, so that'll be a reimbursement. We did put the extra money into the budget for the water, so we're good there. The sewer project now, we'll have to do some additional work on the dryer project. We are in the intended use plan for that. We had hoped that the Long Island Sound Fund monies would help us offset some of that additional cost. But we just found out today that we did not get funded for that $900,000. So Rob and I are going to go back and work with the engineers and look at some other alternatives. One of the alternatives that we're looking at is, which is kind of good news in a way, there's a domestic dryer company that created the original design for the Shinshi dryers that we then bought from China. So I don't know how they got, well, you guys know how this works with the technology back and forth between these, unfortunately. So they're trying to establish a market here in the US. And one of the things they want to do is use us as a demonstration site so they can sell these new dryers that would be manufactured here in the Northeast, which would be fantastic for us because it would give us a domestic supplier. It's basically the same technology, a little bit different process than what we currently have in our dryer, but close enough to where all the components would be interchangeable, pretty much would work. So I wouldn't have to rely on a container coming over from China if I needed a compressor or a belt or replacement types of equipment. So we're gonna look at what that might mean in terms of what the village would have to invest, because we think we might be able to offset some of that additional cost that we didn't get in that grant. So I'll come back to you with some of that information as we develop that. But I think ultimately we'll get that project done for pretty close to what we had originally talked about when it's all said and done. So that one is still underway.
The tank lining, what's the price on that?
It was $175 flat, and they did hold their price, so they held their 2023 pricing.
Because we're funding that internally.
We're funding that with cash.
As well as the Kissel.
Yeah.
Right, Kissel Hill will get bond authorization, but we don't have to necessarily issue the bonds for that. So that'll bring those projects up to date in terms of the water and sewer. The only other one that we're gonna look at is Canal Street. Just because as we're tearing up the utilities for the bridge, if we have to update some of the water, sewer, and potential stormwater connections there, that'll be the opportunity to do that.
Right.
So that work is still not ready for design. I still don't have all of the soil boring data from the engineers, as well as their, I'd ask them for their digital survey data, so that I can share it with our engineers and get proposals so we can start to look at that in more detail. So that will be forthcoming. And that'll be part of our conversations when we start talking budget later on in 2024. We'll see exactly what might need to be done. So that one is still underway. So those are the basic, the significant capital projects, both in water and sewer. Sort of an update.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments? Now we'll move on to 5 financials.
So there was a copy of a memo from Alyssa in your packet. She did have some detail from the last meeting that she just wanted to share with the board. So there was, I think, a host of different questions that had been asked, and she has some specific answers for the line items that were referred to. So I don't know if you want to go over anything, if there was any questions about her memo, and then she had also then updated our financials for this meeting as well, so.
On the receivables?
On the
Is that-
sewer receivables.
Sewer receivables?
Yes.
Okay, so we know, we know about the Westminster Fire District.
So we think we're getting a handle somewhat on that.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's probably understated, but
A little bit, I would say. Yeah.
But the Village of Saxons River, what, disregard this because they're current, you're saying they're current?
So I think what ended up happening was, and Alyssa can explain in more detail, I think the accounts receivable, what they did is bill them for the whole year at one point in time.
That's,
So it showed.
that's what we did this time,
That's why.
or the whole 6 months.
Normally, they would not have done that, Jay. They just bill it at the time.
Well, our annual contract this year was like $62,000. Okay, and do they pay it quarterly? Do they pay that fee quarterly, or? Because we're showing a receivable of 40,000. And if they pay it monthly, maybe that 62.
I do think it is monthly that they send in a check, just like everybody else who pays. So we bill for the 6 months or the year, and then with monthly, like, tickets that go with that bill.
That would make sense. The 40,000 would make sense then
Right.
as a monthly. Because
They're just.
I know in the financials, we show the full amount of the revenue
Right.
as being billed.
Right, so it looks like we have this huge amount of receivable, but it's just because of the timing,
Okay.
as you get the monthly payments, and they do pay. So we've never had an issue with that.
Okay, then on these two, DL Lawrence and Black River Driving School, they're both over 120 days. Are these companies in business, or is that a bad debt? Is that a write-off?
So the DJ Lawrence, I have sent him a letter. He is out of business. But I have sent him a letter requesting that he pay. I'm not sure if we have the ability to, he does own a house, but it's in Springfield. I don't know what kind of a lien we could place. I would have to talk to the lawyer on that if there was something, because we're not a contractor, so I don't think, you know what I mean? We couldn't do a contractor lien. It might end up being a bad debt. The Black River Driving School one, they're gonna pay that. They're just really slow. They know about it. We've had conversations.
And our other major receivable concern in the sewer department, they have kept up with their agreement. So they have been paying the arrearage check plus the monthly amount of subtage for the last 2 months' payments. So feeling pretty good.
So is that, it's now showing at 63,000. Was it higher than that?
So this is Best Septic now, Alyssa.
Yeah, it was close to 90,000.
So what will they be paying November 30th? They'll be paying the
So every month,
25?
so every month they pay me 10,000 for the arrears.
Yeah.
Plus they pay me that month's septage costs. So I think this month they paid me a $21,000 check for the septage and 10,000 for the arrears. Next month it'll probably be close to about the same amount. So they've been keeping current with the billings and paying the arrearages.
Okay.
So
Good,
that seems to be working.
great, thank you.
Anything else, Grace?
On that? No.
Yeah.
On the financials, got some
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
By the way, Alyssa, your sheet here was very helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just a couple of questions. It certainly applies to the general fund and the water fund, and that's bank interest earned. We're not showing anything. Is that something that is taking a while to develop?
Yeah, I normally do that quarterly, and I just haven't done it yet.
Because for the sewer fund, it'll be a charge, or else it'll be a zero or whatever. But okay, on the general fund, the parking fees of 900. Obviously, the parking ban's in effect. Are we just bringing in the fees now and to be booked later?
Well, the people still sign up for the off-street parking. So through this month, we'll still see people coming to buy the permits. So I don't think that that's been a fully recognized, that revenue.
No, it obviously hasn't, because it's sort of either gonna happen now or it's not gonna happen for the rest of the year, but.
You talking about the 905 jigs on the 22?
Yes.
Yeah, 905.
Yep.
Particularly given the fact that the parking ban is now in effect. On page 3 of 7, at the top, the software support, you put a note in the thing. So we paid the annual fee for that?
Correct.
The FICA is still high, but I guess you're working on that too. I guess we talked about this before, but under the fire department, we are now showing maintenance, which is cleaning. We've expended 1977. We didn't budget anything. Is that for janitorial?
That's for a person. You can explain it, Scott.
So Sean's had a person come in and work 4 or 5 hours a week, working on various problems or projects within it's not just cleaning jigs. He's been helping us with some of the other aspects of the fire asset we just aren't getting to. So it's a little combination there.
Is it the fire department or is it the building?
It's in the fire department side. We have not been using it on the police side. He helped us with some of the replacement of some of the flooring. He's been helping with some other little miscellaneous projects like that we're just not getting to.
Okay. He reviews the.
The radios are in, they've been programmed, and the installers are due to go up tomorrow to hopefully finish what needs to go on the tower itself. So we're hoping to be fully operational by the end of the week, which is helpful because the PD's been using the DPW frequencies because theirs has not been working properly. So it'll be good to have that done.
And the Sophos server fee, is that in question, Alyssa, or?
It's in question whether or not that server is going to be decommissioned for next year or not. It was supposed to be this year, but it didn't make it.
Okay.
Well, now that we have the cameras, I've got a proposal to do the decommissioning. So it will not be in next year's budget for sure. So.
Okay, so that's.
That will get done right before the end of this budget cycle.
Okay. All right, right, that's the general fund. That's all I had in the
Okay.
general fund. I don't know if everybody else.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So back on at the last meeting, Jake, you mentioned that this $1,900 for fire department maintenance.
Yeah.
You said something at the last meeting, you thought that should be located in the police and fire building line items.
Right, but she just explained, or Scott just explained, that it really is a bunch of miscellaneous things in the fire
Right,
that the firemen want fixed or whatever.
right. Stuff on the fire apparatus floor, stuff in the building.
Yeah, all right.
We
So I
just
don't
help
think-
putting in
I think-
bollards, we put in those bollards, working on some of that stuff to protect the side of the building. All these little projects that, we just don't have a lot of manpower to get these little things done.
But that's the trade-off, is it could, for some of those types of things, it could go into the building as opposed to the.
Yeah, we should look at that, and maybe for the budget, we might make a recommendation on that. It might make more sense if we're gonna continue doing this. We're sort of evaluating it, Jake, to see how it really works, to be honest with you, before we make a proposal for the full budget for next year.
Anything else, Jakes?
On the water fund, we put in a grant revenue of 100,000, an estimate. Do we expect to collect that, or is that?
Well, that's the first 61 that we just billed for.
Okay,
And then there might be additional billings depending upon if they require us to do additional work. I think we only identified one service line right now that might be lead. And if that's the case, I think we can use some of that money to do that work as well, Jake. So
okay.
I'm hopeful that that will be all spent and all then reimbursed.
Okay. On page 3, the equipment purchases, are we done for the year, or is there some item of extraordinary nature there?
And purchases. So are you under, which fund are you in, Jake?
This is the water fund.
So, yeah, it's already at 9,099.99. Those are for like smaller miscellaneous type equipment, so.
It's mostly for plant-related things. The
Did
only
they buy
thing
a
that-
lawnmower? Isn't that what it was? It was a lawnmower.
They did buy a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also, there might be some work being done based on the alarm system. We're still trying to figure that out too. So,
Okay. Okay, going to the sewer fund. Our due to is down to 295,000, that's good. It was, I think, 500 the last time.
right,
Just a general comment that this budget versus the other two, on page 2 of 4, the salaries and wages, we're basically a third of the year through, and we're showing 44% of our budget on salaries and wages, which I don't know why we're that high, but
Aren't we 42% of the way in?
we're a little over Jake's on it because we had an extended workers' comp absence that we had to account for because of the Rob surgery. He was out for an extended period. So
did you bring somebody in?
there was a person covering that, and he was obviously getting paid, but he was out on
Okay.
workers' comp.
Okay. Well, but we're 4 months in. That's a third. So, I mean, and we're probably in extra payroll beyond that. So 39, something like that, 40% would be expected. That one's The sewer line, again, was that, this is on page 3, the top, repairs and maintenance of the sewer line. We budgeted 1,000, we've spent 36,000.
Was at the end of Green Street,
We've had a couple of problems.
which was a major,
Well, there was two, right?
Right.
There was the end of Green Street on Rockingham,
right?
Yeah,
and there was one over here, like,
over here.
over by Buckley's parking lot area, somewhere over there, weren't there?
There was one over there, you're
Yeah,
right, near the garage, near the old garage.
Somewhere over there, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
there was another
fairly-
one too.
Is that where it hits?
That's normally where it ends up with extra cost there.
Yeah, the one,
Yeah, that's-
God, the
Repairs.
one at the end of Green Street on Rockingham, that was from almost the pump house all the way down to Green Street. I mean,
Yeah,
they were in
they
there
were chasing
for,
that break for a while.
yeah, they were there
Yeah,
72 hours digging and playing with that,
Yeah.
yeah.
around the clock, basically.
The other one was the sludge and grit disposal. I guess you said we had a problem with the dryer.
One of
We
the
had to
compressors, right, so we've been doing some wet hauling. So you'll see a little bit of an uptick in that when we have to do the wet hauling,
It's a bit of an uptick, all right.
which shows you why the dryer is such a good deal, because when we have to haul, the cost to haul is really expensive. So,
But are we still hauling? I mean, I thought we fixed the dryer.
he is making product now, I believe we're done with the wet haul. I think he just got rid of his last load. But when that goes down, the costs go up quickly, when we're not making biosolid.
But we're always gonna have the sludge disposal because that's the stuff that isn't dryable. That's the actual, like, I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, you can coin a phrase for it, but I think that's in the budget,
Right,
Right.
that stuff.
right.
It's the
wet
hauling
sludge,
that's
hauling the
not-
wet sludge is where, that's the great, it's just variable, just depends on production and if we have problems with the machine.
And then on page 4, there's an item under project expenditures, lower forest of 21,600.
I believe that was when we were doing some of the paving work, there had been a problem in that location. So they went in and did some work prior to the paving. And that just wasn't, so I think that's what that reflects, Jace.
So this is Forest Street.
Lower Forest. Lower,
It's possible it could belong under contract work. I can look that up.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
I think it probably does. I think he just coded it that way.
yeah, I
But-
think it's just coded one item down.
Right. It wasn't programmed. It was not work that we anticipated, but as part of the paving, I think it made sense.
Well, hopefully we can avoid some of that contract work.
Right.
And help the budget here because there's 2 or 3 extraordinary items here that's hitting a budget that can't stand extraordinary items. That's it for me, Paul.
Okay. Anybody else on financial? If not, I'll move on to review agenda items for our next meeting. Our next meeting, which will take place on the 12th of December.
So we'll update the ARPA as the board had requested. So we'll have that information for you. We'll have another round. Hopefully by then we'll have the approvals for the ordinance section that's being reviewed by legal. Then I'll probably have another section for the board to look at to send off to legal. So there'll be some ordinance review at that meeting. Can't think of it.
Will that include trespass?
I will bring it up as part of that.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody?
I think on the sewer account, the number of these extraordinary items, if we could kind of get a picture of that in terms of what it's going to do to our annual budget. I mean, we passed any rate increase this fall. And,
Anything else? If not, I'll move down to review agenda items for the joint board meeting, which is November 28th.
So there will be a couple things on there. Ridwig had asked for some time for a presentation. We're going to try to talk about pavement management and what the program looks like, hopefully over the next 5 years, just as a general discussion.
what was that item?
Pavement management system update, just updating the pavement management and potential 5-year cycle for investment for that. We've been having conversations with the Central Elementary School, with Parks Place, and there's been discussion around, we're doing the transportation alternatives work there, and there's a parking lot that Parks Place uses that's also used by some of the Central Elementary School folks. And just the parking and circulation issues there in general are part of a conversation that's going on. Paul and I have asked the board to have an update, just so we get a sense of what they're thinking about, what kinds of questions or concerns they might have, so that we can then, as a board, look at what options or concerns there might be. So that might take place at the tri-board. I'm not sure yet. We're still trying to schedule that meeting.
I've got a little, I serve on the Rockingham School Board, and this item has been discussed. They found the lease between.
I guess they did find the lease for the parking lot, right?
That parking lot is leased to Parks Place. And the parking, the school parking, for the school employees using that parking lot is not appropriate. And so there's really no issue other than the fact that it belongs to Parks Place.
Right.
And clearly, if they're not using it, if someone parks in there, it's not a big deal. But I think if the demand is such, that's their parking lot, and it's been duly leased to them for $1 a year.
Okay.
So now to the extent that there's parking issues for the school, our board hasn't discussed the parking issues. So anyway, so I think the original question about whether the Parks Place had a right to that, because it is owned by the school,
Right.
Has been resolved.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot of issues related to just how the students, are gonna get in and out based on, the 3rd and 4th graders, because they go down that driveway and the parking there and the pickup and drop off, and we're gonna do some sidewalk work, and we're proposing some paving in that area. Once the sidewalk work is done, the school needs to do some drainage work there, as well as some paving work of their own, so we're trying to figure out a joint project that might work. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this thing, but we'll see where we are. More conversations probably need to be had here at this point.
Anything else for the joint board?
We're gonna have
Fire feasibility,
Any
I'm
update
hoping
on
to have
that?
some update on that, yeah.
Still,
Right.
that's still the plan, hopefully,
Still the plan.
at least something.
Something is the plan.
Was a consultant gonna, interview people or?
Yes,
Okay.
they are. So I'm hoping to get a better schedule. There has been it's been slow out of the gate, put it that way. So, still hopeful that we'll get there.
I'm gonna move on then to review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
I'll make
a motion.
To approve.
I'll second.
Motion been made, and seconded, that we would review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Please sign them if you haven't. I guess they're all signed.
They've been around, yeah.
Anything under other business? Jeff, Jiggs, Connor, Wade.
Yeah, I have two things. One of them is, when's the parade of lights?
December
It's just a reminder, the parade of lights
That's
parade,
Saturday, December
7th?
8th, 9th, or whatever that Saturday
I'm
is.
looking now.
Yes, I think it's that first Saturday.
It is,
Yes,
whatever that day is.
right.
I have it written in my.
I have it as the 8th.
The first,
Okay.
oh,
Okay.
it's the second.
Is it the 8th?
second
Hang on, I might have the
Saturday.
wrong year. I might have the next year. I don't care about next year. It's this year. The 9th is Saturday this year.
Yeah, so it's,
So it'd be the
it's
ninth.
the ninth.
Yeah, it's December 9th, 5 to 7.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That was the easy one. You ready for the hard one?
Sure.
So up at Miners Pond, we have an issue. I think there's an easy fix for, but there's two, to just summarize and put it simple.
Mm,
Up at Miners Pond, there's two locations where visitors that have their dogs can take dog waste, plastic bags, to pick up any waste from their dogs if they so choose to. The problem is neither one of them, what do they call them, nets or whatever, dog mitt
Mutt
things?
mitts.
Mutt nets, like we have around town here?
Yeah.
Neither one of them have the things underneath them to put your
Waste in.
waste into.
right.
So lately, a couple people I know have been, and again, most people are good about it, but like anything, it only takes a few to, so there's, some people are in the habit of, why they would do this is beyond me, but they take the mitts, they walk their dog, they pick up their stuff, and then they just toss it in the woods, because there's nowhere to put it. So I should have taken a picture, so, but at least, but the other part of the people that do take the time to pick it up, because there's no container,
Mm,
they've just been piling them up at the bottom of the pole where the nut net thing is. So at least they're like, well, I'll put it here, I guess. But then the problem is, they sit there for days upon days upon days, and
Right.
people who drive by there every day don't stop and pick them up or whatever. So I'd like to see them either removed completely or leave them there and just put the containers up so that at least the people have a place to put it. Because there's never been, that's all I'm saying. At least they were,
Perfectly reasonable.
have a place to put them. Right now, I picked up 9 the other day.
And then maybe just pass on to the water guys that, especially if both of those are very convenient for them. As soon as they, once a week, grab the plastic bag and tie it off and,
I'm sure we could do something simple. Just keep
run it to
simple.
recycling
Right.
or whatever the hell they need to do with it,
Yeah. Why somebody would
Throw it in the woods is a little bit.
Would- go to the effort to pick up their dog waste and then just toss it in the woods anyway. You might as well just let the dog go do his thing in the woods and then walk on and carry on with your day.
I mean, no, because other animals.
But I just don't get it, but at least some of them do take the time, well, I'll pick it up, and because there's no container there, I'll at least put it next to where I got the mitt to begin with.
Right.
But then they sit there for days and weeks upon time, on occasion, and
We'll work out something, so. Yeah,
Okay, great.
we certainly don't want dog waste piling up there for sure.
Thank you.
Not good for our water quality.
Anything else,
That's
Scott?
all I got. All set.
Anything? All
Nothing.
set, okay.
Well done.
So I guess I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second?
Motion been made, seconded, that we adjourn. All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
This meeting was recorded by Falls Area Community Television, located at 1 Hospital Court, Bellows Falls, Vermont. If you would like a copy of the meeting, our phone number is 802-463-1613, or email us at fact810@gmail.com. Falls Area Community TV, keeping government honest.